Welcome back to the TwinSpires Jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Darin Zoccali to talk our best bets and fades of the week at Churchill Downs, Aqueduct, and Fairgrounds, which opens this weekend. And James, we'll start things off with you today. Tell us what your best bet of the week is and where you're going to play that.
My best bet of the weekend is number one, Nostalgic in the Chaluki Stakes, race 10 at Churchill Downs on Saturday. I love the cutback to a mile distance for this 3-year-old filly. I don't think she exits a race at a mile and an eighth in the Beldame, where she finished third to Randomized, who came back and ran second in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. But her two best races, I think, of the year were both at Saratoga, 2 and 3 starts back. I love the cut. I understand why Bill Mott has kept Nostalgic at longer distances. She won the Gazelle early in her 3-year-old season at a mile and an eighth, and he kept her at least 9 furlongs for her next 7 or 8 starts. But she showed last time that perhaps a little bit less ground is more in her wheelhouse. She did record her first 2 wins at a mile and a 16th distance. And I think maybe even 7 furlongs will be in her future if she runs well at the 1-turn mile on Saturday. Darin, who do you have as your best bet?
Yeah, I like that play too. Hidden Connection, the favorite, and there is one for her last 12, and looks like a favorite that I think you could probably bet against. I'm going to actually head to opening weekend at the Fairgrounds. Race number 8, they have a good non-winners of 2 other than going at the about mile and a 16th distance on the turf. And I like a horse here in Musical Score from post number 6, going out for Brad Cox. That field that she beat at Indiana, that was actually a pretty good allowance race with a full field of 11. There was a couple of decent runners in there. And I'm hoping that horses, maybe the better seen horses from Indiana, or Horseshoe Indianapolis, I should say, they might maybe shy away a little bit, thinking that it's lesser competition, but it was a pretty good group. This horse was beaten 3 lengths against a strong allowance field at Churchill Downs prior to that. She's really never run a bad race. She's got versatility here. She lands a perfect spot in the middle, and I love the fact that Pedroza, who rode her at Horseshoe Indianapolis, gets back on board. Cox wins at almost a 30% clip with one of her strongest ROIs with horses that won their previous start. I think Musical Score is absolutely a legitimate threat to go back-to-back in allowance company, Ashley.
Yeah, I like that pick. And James, I really like Nostalgic. That was almost my best bet, but you beat me to the punch. So I'm going to take it over to Aqueduct and talk the Turf Sprint Championship. And I'm going to take a shot with number 2, Allegon. This is a 4-year-old California Chrome gelding. He drew post 2 just on the outside of Todd Pletcher runner Witt, and he raced against a few of today's rivals in the Belmont Turf Sprint, which was taken off the turf. He finished 4th by 1 3/4 of a length, but 2 back he raced on the turf and finished just ahead second to No Balls, who of course just came back and won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Allegon also, he won the Wolf Hill Stakes 4 back at 5.5 furlongs. He's 4 for 8 on the turf, has 2 seconds and a third from 8 career tries. And picking up Manny Franco here, a 24% winner at Aqueduct, has the most wins of any rider at Aqueduct so far this meet. So I'm going to take a shot, Allegon over our shot, who I think will be the morning line favorite. But there's also rain in the forecast. So Darin, you think we're coming off the turf here?
I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think it's a lot of rain based on what we've seen, but count on you to pick a difficult Terp sprint to focus on your best bet once again, Ashley.
Well,
that is a tough spot.
Well, I definitely know.
Darin's right about Brad Cox. I mean, he likes to ship up that the interstate to Horseshoe Indianapolis. He's constantly running horses there. He ran Nick's Goes like half the sister there this week, and she's still a promising filly. Monomoy Girl ran there. I'm not concerned at all about him running young horses at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
Well, just in case we do come off the turf at Aqueduct, I did want to mention our main track only entry. We've got Durante, who just won the Grade 3 Boulder Roller at Aqueduct and 5 for 6 in his last 6 starts. So certainly if we're on the dirt, I'm probably going to go a different route with Durante, but on the turf, I'm going to take a shot with Allegon. Well, let's talk about the horses that we're fading at a short price. Darin, who do you have?
Yeah, putting on my hardcore handicapping hat and going to just a $30,000 a 2 Life claiming event at Churchill Downs in race number 8, which kicks off the late pick 4 sequence. I'm against Fan the Fire here, who's the 5-2 morning line favorite from the inside. This horse was off for nearly 2 years when previously in the barn of Mike Maker after running in a stake event as a 2-year-old, breaking his maiden, coming back in a good allowance, and then going to the sidelines for like I said, just about 2 years. Came back for 40,000 and now won as a 2 Life company. Showed a little bit of speed, but tired. Now, you could certainly make the argument that the horse needed the race. Came back 4 weeks later, interestingly enough, with only one workout between them, despite the fact that the horse was coming off of a long layoff, dropped down to 30,000, showed less speed, and really kind of an even finish, and now changes barns again. Joe Sharp is only 8% with horses debuting for his barn, making their first start for the barn, is getting the addition of Lasix here. Just a lot of yellow caution flags here. Hasn't worked out since that last race. Only the one workout since October the 7th. So a lot of questions, and I think this is absolutely a horse that I'm going to try to beat to kick off this late pick 4 at a short price, James.
Definitely doesn't look, that looks like a pretty contentious race. I'm going to take another, my best fade of the weekend is going to come. My best fade of the weekend is number 7 Puckered in race 6 at Churchill Downs on Saturday. It's a $50,000 starter allowance for 2-year-old fillies. Puckered ran first time out on the turf, main special weight at Ellis, ran poorly that race. Safi Joseph dropped this Constitution filly in for a maiden 30 claimer. I thought she caught an extremely weak field on September 20th. She said she went 25 and change, 50 and change on a clear lead. The pace could not have been any more softer and drew off to win by 12. That win margin, typically on most speed rating metrics, that will come back a little inflated because you have to give figures to all the finishers in the field. Pucker got a 73 Bristnet speed rating. 4 or 5 of her rivals have run faster, so the race didn't come back fast. She won't get the same trip on the lead on Saturday, and I think she's vulnerable at short odds with leading rider Tyler Gaffleone. Ashley, who's your best fade?
All right, we got a claimer, we got an allowance race, taking it to a maiden claimer. Race 4, but hey, this is the start of the pick 5 at Churchill Downs, so it's still important. And it was a tough week for finding fades for the jury. We had a lot of logical favorites, I thought, in the stakes races, but I'm going number 12, Pacific States at 7-2 in race 4. He drew the far outside, a 3-year-old gelding who's 0 for 10, and his speed figure last out at Churchill was just a 68 when a distant 5th in a 30K maiden claimer, and he just raced on November 3rd. So I don't like Pacific States at all in this spot. I thought Salevo, I think is how you say it, Steve Asmussen runner who has a chance to improve second start off the claim. I also like number 8 Chitwood at 9-2, who can improve with the rider switch to Tyler Gaffleone. Was beaten as the favorite last out for Greg Foley, who's a high percentage winner at Churchill. So definitely going to be fading that 7-2 Pacific States in this spot. All right, well, Darin, before we move on to what else we're going to be watching this weekend, tell us about some promos at TwinSpires.
Sure, yeah. Well, as Churchill Downs meet continues to roll on, we have the 10 times wager reward points there. Every day at Churchill Downs, we have a $2,000 hit it and split it on the late pick 5 as well. We have the Fairgrounds kicking off this weekend. So for the next couple of Saturdays, there's a $2,000 challenge at the Fairgrounds, select races where you have to pick the winners, make $10 win bets. And the person with the most winners from those select races is going to get $2,000. If there's multiple winners, they share in $2,000, which is a great prize for just having to make a handful of win wagers. And we have our final feeder for our NHC qualifier this Saturday at Churchill Downs. $2,500 prize pool for that. If you qualify, you get a spot in the $5,000 NHC qualifier a week from Saturday, where we're going to send 2 lucky winners to Las Vegas next year for the NHC. So a lot of good stuff, as always, at TwinSpires. We got new meets coming up, Fairgrounds. We got Turfway coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll have an offer there as well. So be sure to keep refreshing that offers page because we love to fill it up, Ashley.
All right, thanks, Darin. And James, we'll go back to you. Tell us what else you're going to be watching for this weekend.
My what else this weekend is Integration in the Grade 2 Hill Prince at Aqueduct on Saturday. Integration is a 3-year-old colt by Quality Road. He cost $700,000. He's out of Harmonize, who was a Grade 1 winning turf filly. And he worked last year as a 2-year-old, put in like 5 or 6 works last year. He's worked every single month this year, January, February, March, April, all the way through. Did not debut until August 12th of his 3-year-old season in a 1/16 turf race at Colonial Downs, won going away by 6+ lengths, came back in the Grade 2 or Grade 3 Virginia Derby, and I think he beat a really nice field. I loved his performance that day, Darin and Ashley, and I think the Virginia Derby's continued to be flattered since. Of course, the runner-up Program Trader, who's coming off a Program Trading, who was coming off a Grade 1 win at Saratoga, hasn't run back since. But the third-place finisher Runaway Storm, who was also making his stakes debut that day, came right back to win the Grade 3 Bryan Station. He's won 3 or 4 on turf. Looks like a real promising turf runner. And Integration, let me just say, his turn of foot, I think, has just been so dynamite. I think he's like got top class, like top quality type individual based on those performance, that kind of potential. And I'm really excited to see him run. Shug McGahee is not afraid to take these horses that are eventual turf stars and wait until the end of their 3-year-old season to run them in turf stakes. Point of Entry didn't even run in stakes until he was a 4-year-old. Lurer earned his first turf stakes win in the Breeders' Cup Mile at the end of his 3-year-old season. And Integration is another horse that I think is coming on right now. And with Up to the Mark being retired to Lanes End Farm, I think Integration is one of the most promising prospects in the older turf division heading into 2024. And if he, holds his form in the Hill Prince, I think he's set to run a really big race, Darin.
Yeah, I loved his effort down there in the Virginia Derby. The horse that ran third that you mentioned, Runaway Storm, actually set the pace that day. It was a pretty quick pace. And then if you watched his win at Keeneland, he had a disastrous start where he came from dead last, made a huge and wide move on the far turn to get up in a driving photo finish. Shout out to trainer Ethan West getting his first graded stakes win and doing it at Keeneland. It was a really impressive win. So he beat a horse that came out of that and didn't just win a stake, but ran a dynamite race, overcoming a lot of trouble in the process. I agree with you. I think this is a horse that has every opportunity to be a major player in the older turf division. He's got a point of entry main sequence type look to him in terms of his upside at this point of his career. And I'm certainly excited to see his performance on Saturday in the Hill Prince. I'm going to give a shout out to a horse running in the 8th race at Laurel on Saturday, an 8-year-old mare by the name of Shasta Star, who has won 6 of 9 starts this year. She has been running pretty much every other week for the last 6 weeks. She's making her 4th start in the last 6 weeks as they try to get as many of these turf tries in the Mid-Atlantic as they possibly can. She made 3 starts in the month of October. She did get beat last time, finishing 2nd, but she has done nothing but run consistent race after consistent race. At the age of 8, she's in the midst of her best season yet. And she may not be a major stakes player by any stretch, but it's always cool to see some of these hard-knocking older horses or older mares have these types of seasons where they just keep on running and keep running well. So shout out to Shasta Star running in the 8th at Laurel. See if she can get her 7th victory of the season, Ashley.
Yeah, you certainly don't see that very often anymore. Well, I'm going to talk about Fairgrounds real quick since we're kicking off our winter meet on Friday, 76-day winter meet. And of course, we've got the $1 million Louisiana Derby, Grade 2, part of the Road to the Kentucky Derby, the highlight of the meet, and also the Gun Runner Stakes for 2-year-olds on December 23rd. We have 73 stakes total scheduled and 3 non-graded stakes on Saturday. But I wanted to mention a couple storylines. We have 15 new trainers that are stabling at Fairgrounds. And if you listen to Jason Beam's podcast, he had Kevin Kilroy on earlier this week talking about a couple of the big storylines for Fairgrounds. Definitely go check that out to hear even more in-depth analysis of Fairgrounds before the meet. But one trainer I wanted to mention was Larry Rivelli, who of course had 2 fills, finished 2nd in the Kentucky Derby last year. He'll be at Fairgrounds with, I believe, 41 stalls at Fairgrounds this meet. Of course, just had that big win in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint with no balls. And he didn't sound like he knew for sure if he had 2 fills in there this year, but did note, what do you think, Mark, as a potential horse that he could enter in LeCompte or the Risen Star potentially. So we'll see what happens there. We also have a couple of new jockeys to the circuit. One of them is Ben Curtis,